Dwayne Herbert opened the security app, expecting betrayal. 13 caregivers before her had failed him, stolen from him, broken every promise they'd made. So when he saw those 3 wheelchairs sitting empty in the middle of his living room, his stomach dropped like a stone. His first thought was panic. His second thought was rage. But then he saw them. William, Henry, Malcolm. His 3 paralyzed sons, the boys every doctor said would never stand, never walk, never take a single independent step, were upright, trembling, moving forward, one foot, then another, walking toward her outstretched arms. Dwayne's phone slipped from his hand. His back hit the wall. His knees buckled. And the man who had accepted impossible as final, who had buried hope alongside his wife 2 years ago, watched it all shatter on a screen in his own living room. But before we go any further, I need you to do something. Hit that subscribe button right now. Tap the like button, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Because if you've ever felt like hope was too dangerous, like believing again might destroy you, this story is for you. Sometimes miracles don't ask for permission. They just show up. 2 years ago, Dwayne Herbert lost everything that mattered. Not slowly, not gradually, all at once. His wife, Elisa, died during childbirth. Not complications they could have predicted. Not something the doctors warned them about. Just gone. 37 minutes after delivering triplets, her blood pressure dropped. The monitors screamed. The medical team rushed in. And before Dwayne could process what was happening, his wife, his partner of 8 years, the woman who'd fought through 6 years of infertility and 4 rounds of IVF to get pregnant, was slipping away. He held her hand until it went cold. The room was so quiet. That's what he remembers most. How quiet everything became after the machine stopped beeping. Like the whole world was holding its breath. A nurse touched his shoulder. Gentle, careful. "Mr. Herbert, your sons. They're in the NICU. They need you." Dwayne walked out of that room on legs that didn't feel like his own. Down a hallway that stretched forever. Through double doors, into a unit filled with the sound of breathing machines and beeping monitors, and tiny, fighting heartbeats. And there they were. William, Henry, Malcolm. 3 tiny bodies in 3 incubators. Premature. Fragile. Fighting for every breath. His sons? Dwayne pressed his hand against the glass. He wanted to feel something: joy, love, connection, anything. But all he felt was emptiness. A hollow space where his heart used to be. The neonatologist approached him. Dr. Richardson. Dwayne would never forget his face. The careful way he held his clipboard. The practiced sympathy in his voice. "Mr. Herbert, we need to talk about the boy's prognosis." Dwayne nodded. He couldn't speak yet. The brain scans show significant abnormalities consistent with cerebral palsy. All 3 boys. The oxygen deprivation during delivery caused damage to the areas controlling movement and muscle coordination. The words floated past Dwayne, like debris in water. "We won't know the full extent for several months, but based on what we're seeing now, the prognosis is not favorable. Severe CP. The kind that affects gross motor function, fine motor skills, possibly speech development." "What does that mean?" Dwayne's voice came out flat. "Dead." "Doctor," Richardson set down his clipboard. "It means your sons will face significant physical limitations. They may require mobility assistance, wheelchairs, walkers. Walking independently is unlikely. In cases this severe, it's often impossible. Impossible." That word would echo in Dwayne's head for the next 2 years. "I'm sorry," the doctor continued. "I know this isn't what you want to hear, especially not today. But you need to prepare yourself for the reality of what's ahead." Dwayne looked at his sons through the glass. 3 tiny fighters who didn't know their mother was already gone, who didn't know their father was breaking apart in real time. He nodded again. Because what else could he do? The funeral was 3 days later. Dwayne doesn't remember most of it. Faces he recognized but couldn't name. Hands shaking his. Voices saying things that didn't register. His brother Marcus stood beside him the whole time, solid and silent, holding him upright when his legs threatened to give out. They buried Elisa on a Thursday. It rained. Dwayne stood at the grave with an umbrella he didn't remember opening, watching them lower his wife into the ground. Someone was reading a passage from Scripture, something about peace and rest and God's plan. Dwayne didn't believe in plans anymore. He believed in cold hospital rooms and empty incubators and doctors who said impossible with such certainty. After the funeral, people came to the house. The mansion he'd bought for Elisa because she loved historic architecture and high ceilings and rooms with stories to tell. The house that now felt like a museum. Beautiful. Empty. Dead. His mother tried to make him eat. "Baby, you have to keep your strength up." For the boys. Dwayne pushed the plate away. His sister-in-law offered to help. "We can hire nurses, get you support. You don't have to do this alone." But he was alone. That was the truth no one wanted to say out loud. Elisa was gone. His sons were broken. And Dwayne Herbert, successful real estate developer, self-made millionaire, the man who'd built an empire from nothing, couldn't fix any of it. The boys came home 6 weeks later. The nursery, Elisa had designed pale yellow walls, a hand-painted mural of elephants and giraffes walking under an acacia tree, 3 cribs arranged in a half circle so the boys could see each other when they woke, sat empty, untouched, perfect. Instead, they set up the therapy room. Medical beds with adjustable frames, safety rails, monitors that tracked breathing, heart rate, oxygen levels, specialized positioning equipment, 3 custom wheelchairs, infant-sized, with head supports and chest harnesses to keep the boys upright. This wasn't the room Elisa had imagined. This was survival. The physical therapist came twice a week. Stretches, range of motion exercises, attempts to stimulate muscle response. The boys would cry during the sessions, not screaming, just this exhausted, defeated sound that made Dwayne want to put his fist through a wall. "It's good they're crying," the therapist said. "It means they're engaging. That's what we want." But they weren't engaging. They were suffering. Months passed. The boys didn't improve. William would stare at the ceiling for hours, his small body rigid in the wheelchair. Henry's hands stayed curled into permanent fists, his fingers locked in a position the doctors called contracture. Malcolm barely opened his eyes, like the world was too much to take in. Dwayne hired specialists from Boston, from Johns Hopkins. He flew in a neurologist from Germany who'd published groundbreaking research on pediatric CP. Each one examined the boys, reviewed the scans, ran their tests. And each one confirmed what Dr. Richardson had said: severe cerebral palsy, permanent damage, limited prognosis. Walking was not likely. Independent mobility was not likely. A normal life was not likely. One doctor, Dwayne can't remember his name, tried to be encouraging. With intensive therapy and the right support, they might achieve some limited function. Perhaps standing with assistance, maybe taking a few supported steps. But you need to adjust your expectations, Mr. Herbert. These boys will need lifelong care. Dwayne wrote another check, bought more equipment, and adjusted his expectations down to nothing. At night, alone in the house, Dwayne would walk past the yellow nursery. Sometimes, he'd stand in the doorway, looking at the mural Elisa had painted. The mother elephant with her trunk wrapped protectively around 3 baby elephants. "They'll grow up strong," Elisa had said while painting it, one hand on her swollen belly. "All 3 of them. They'll take care of each other." Dwayne would close the door, return to his office, pull up medical reports on his computer and read them until the words blurred together. He stopped sleeping in the bedroom he'd shared with Elisa. Couldn't bear to lie in that bed alone. Instead, he'd fall asleep at his desk, surrounded by files and monitors and the blue glow of surveillance screens. Because that's what he'd become. A man watching his life from a distance. Present but not participating. Alive but not living. His sons needed him, and he couldn't reach them. Not really. He could hire the best care money could buy, he could provide equipment and therapy and round-the-clock nursing support. But he couldn't fix them, and he couldn't forgive himself for that. On their first birthday, Dwayne ordered a cake from the bakery Elisa had loved. 3 layers. Chocolate with raspberry filling. "Happy first birthday, William." Henry and Malcolm, written in blue frosting. He set it on the table in the therapy room. The boys sat in their wheelchairs, surrounded by nurses who sang and clapped and tried to make it festive. William stared at the wall. Henry's head drooped to the side. Malcolm kept his eyes closed. Dwayne cut 3 small pieces of cake. The nurses helped the boys blow out the single candle by holding their hands near the flame. Later, after everyone left, Dwayne threw the rest of the cake in the trash. He stood in the empty therapy room, looking at his sons. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Your mother would have done this better. She would have known how to reach you, how to help you. I don't. I don't know how to do this." None of them moved. Dwayne walked out. And that's when he decided hope was too dangerous. Believing they could get better, that they could exceed their prognosis, that some miracle might happen, that was a fantasy. And fantasies hurt more than acceptance. So Dwayne Herbert buried his hope right next to Elisa. And he decided to survive on nothing but control. The caregivers started after the first birthday. Dwayne's mother had been helping, flying in from Atlanta every few weeks, staying as long as she could. But she had her own health issues. Diabetes, high blood pressure, and caring for triplets with severe special needs was too much. "Baby, you need professional help," she'd said. "This is too big for one person." So Dwayne called an agency. Premium Home Care Solutions, 5-star reviews, background checks, licensed professionals. He paid extra for the best. The first caregiver lasted 2 weeks. Jennifer, mid-40s, 20 years of pediatric nursing experience. She came with impeccable references and a warm smile. On day 3, Dwayne found her crying in the hallway. "I'm sorry," she said, wiping her eyes. "It's just, watching them like this. They're so young, so helpless. I can't do this." She quit the next morning. The second caregiver, Patricia, lasted a month. She seemed competent at first, followed the protocols, administered medications on schedule, documented everything properly. But Dwayne started noticing something. During therapy sessions, she'd sit in the corner scrolling her phone. When the boys needed repositioning, something that had to be done every 2 hours to prevent bed sores, she'd delay, finishing her text messages first. One afternoon, Dwayne checked the cameras and saw her FaceTiming someone, while William cried in his wheelchair, clearly uncomfortable, needing to be moved. She was laughing at something on her screen. Ignoring his son, Dwayne fired her that evening. The third caregiver seemed perfect. Rachel, early 30s, specialized training in cerebral palsy care. She was attentive, knowledgeable, patient with the boys. For 6 weeks, Dwayne thought maybe finally he'd found someone he could trust. Then he got a call from his lawyer. "Dwayne, we have a problem. There are photos of your sons on a medical gossip website. Their faces, their equipment, details about their condition. Someone sold these to a tabloid." Dwayne's blood went cold. "How much?" The site paid $850. Dwayne pulled up the surveillance footage, reviewed every minute of Rachel's shifts. And there it was, week 3. While the boys were sleeping, Rachel taking photos with her phone. Careful, deliberate, documenting their medical equipment, their positioning devices, their specialized wheelchairs. He confronted her the next morning. "It was just a few pictures," she said, defensive. "I didn't show their faces that clearly, and I needed the money. Do you know what caregivers get paid?" "Get out," Dwayne said. His voice was quiet, deadly. "Right now. Before I call the police." After that, something inside Dwayne broke. Not dramatically, not all at once. Just cracked. He stopped seeing people as people. He saw risks, potential betrayals, threats to his son's privacy, their safety, their dignity. Caregiver number 4 stole medication. OxyContin, prescribed for severe muscle spasms. Dwayne noticed the pills disappearing faster than prescribed. He confronted her. She denied it. He fired her anyway and had to file a police report. Caregiver number 5 was late constantly, made excuses, left the boys in wet diapers because she didn't have time to change them before her shift ended. Gone. Caregiver number 6 seemed fine until Dwayne discovered she'd accessed his home office computer, tried to log into his bank accounts. He caught it because of the security alerts on his phone. She was gone before sunrise. Number 7 quit without notice, just didn't show up one day. Left the boys alone with no coverage until the agency could send a replacement. Number 8 complained constantly. "This job is too depressing. These kids are never going to get better. What's the point?" Dwayne fired her in the middle of her shift. Number 9, 10, and 11 blurred together. Various failures, various betrayals, various disappointments. Some were incompetent, some were cruel, some were just indifferent. By the time 13 caregivers had come and gone in 18 months, Dwayne Herbert had become someone he didn't recognize. He installed cameras everywhere. Living room, hallway, therapy room, kitchen, every angle, every corner. High-definition feeds, streaming to his phone, his laptop, his office monitors. He watched constantly. During the day, he'd have the feeds up on a second monitor while working. At night, he'd sit in his office, reviewing footage, looking for signs, red flags, proof that whoever was caring for his sons was going to fail them, because they always failed. Everyone failed. His brother Marcus noticed. "Dwayne, man, you can't live like this. Watching cameras all night, you look like hell." "I'm protecting my sons." "You're isolating yourself. This isn't healthy." "Don't lecture me about healthy," Dwayne snapped. "You don't have kids. You don't understand." Marcus backed off, but Dwayne saw the concern in his eyes, the worry. He didn't care. The mansion became a fortress. 29 rooms, most of them empty. Dwayne used 3, his office, his bedroom, the kitchen when he remembered to eat. The rest sat frozen in time. The formal dining room, where he and Elisa had planned to host Thanksgiving dinners. The sunroom, where she'd wanted to read while the boys played. The library with floor-to-ceiling shelves she'd been slowly filling with books. All empty now, all silent. The fountain in the back garden stopped working. Dwayne kept meaning to call someone. He never did. It sat there, dry, collecting leaves. The yellow nursery remained untouched. Door closed. Mural perfect. Cribs waiting for children who would never sleep in them. Sometimes late at night, Dwayne would walk through the house like a ghost. Past walls where family photos used to hang, he'd taken them all down 6 months after Elisa died. Couldn't bear seeing her smile everywhere, past rooms full of furniture no one sat on, through hallways that echoed with his footsteps. The house was supposed to be full of life. Elisa had insisted on it. "A house this big needs people, Dwayne. It needs laughter and mess and memories. Otherwise, it's just a building." Now it was just a building. Beautiful, historic, dead. His mother begged him to sell it. "Baby, this place is too much. Too many memories. Too much space. Get something smaller. Start over." But Dwayne wouldn't leave. This was where Elisa had been happy. Where she'd planned their future. Where she'd painted murals and arranged furniture and imagined their sons growing up. Leaving felt like betraying her all over again. So he stayed. A man alone in a mansion built for a family that no longer existed. His business suffered. Herbert Development Group had been his pride: commercial real estate, high-end residential projects, properties across the East Coast. He'd built it from nothing, starting with a single renovation project in Newark and growing it into a multi-million-dollar empire. But for the past 18 months, he'd barely been present. His partners covered for him at first, took meetings he couldn't attend, made decisions he should have made. But eventually, they started leaving him out of the loop entirely. "We need you here, Dwayne," his business partner James said during a rare office appearance. "We've got the Philadelphia project falling apart, the DC deal needs your signature, and the investors are asking questions." "Handle it," Dwayne said, not looking up from his phone. He was watching the therapy room feed. Making sure the current caregiver number 11, he thought he was losing track, was following protocol. James sighed. "I've been handling it. But this is your company, man. Your vision. We need you engaged." I said handle it. James left. 2 weeks later, Dwayne got an email. The partners were restructuring, reducing his active role, offering to buy out his shares if he wanted to step away entirely. He should have been angry. Instead, he felt nothing. Money didn't matter. Success didn't matter. The empire he'd built felt meaningless now. All that mattered were 3 boys in wheelchairs who couldn't hold up their own heads, and protecting them from a world that kept trying to hurt them. The 13th caregiver arrived on a Tuesday morning in March. Dwayne was in his office when the doorbell rang. He checked the camera feed. The agency had told him to expect someone new, though he'd stopped learning their names until they proved they could last more than a month. Through the front door camera, he saw her. Young, maybe 28, 29, African-American woman with her hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing scrubs, and carrying a professional bag. She stood on his doorstep with her shoulders back, chin up, composed. Not fidgeting, not checking her phone, just waiting. Dwayne buzzed her in. He met her in the foyer. She extended her hand immediately. "Mr. Herbert, I'm Linda Johnson. Premium Home Care sent me." Her handshake was firm, her eyes were steady. She looked directly at him, not with the nervous energy most caregivers brought, not with the practiced sympathy he'd learned to hate, just clear, present. "Linda," Dwayne said, not returning the warmth. He gestured toward his office. "We need to establish some ground rules before you start." "Of course." She followed him down the hallway. Dwayne didn't miss how she glanced at the walls, the faint outlines where picture frames used to hang, the empty spaces that used to hold family photos. In his office, Dwayne pulled out a folder, her file from the agency, background check, certifications, references. "You've worked with special needs children before," he said. Not a question, a statement. "Yes, sir. 6 years in pediatric home care, 3 of those specifically with cerebral palsy cases. The boys are severe. Level 5 on the GMFCS scale. They require total assistance for all activities of daily living. Mobility, feeding, positioning, everything." "I understand." Dwayne looked up at her. "Do you? Because 12 people before you said they understood, and 12 people failed." Something flickered across Linda's face. Not offense, something else. Recognition, maybe. "Mr. Herbert," she said quietly, "I read the case file. I know about your wife. I know about the boy's diagnosis. I know this has been hard. And I'm sorry for what you've been through." "I don't need sympathy," Dwayne cut her off. "I need someone who follows instructions. The medical protocols are very specific. No improvising. No experimental treatments. No bonding exercises or hope speeches. The doctors have made the prognosis very clear." Linda was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. "I understand what you're asking." "Good." Dwayne handed her a packet. "This outlines the daily schedule. Medications, therapy times, positioning rotations, feeding protocols. Everything is documented. Everything is monitored." He gestured to the monitors on his wall, 3 screens showing different angles of the therapy room. "There are cameras throughout the house. I review all footage, so don't think you can cut corners or—" "Mr. Herbert." Linda's voice was gentle but firm. "I'm not here to hurt your sons. I'm here to care for them. That's all." Dwayne studied her face, looking for the lie, the crack, the sign that she was just another person who'd disappoint him. He couldn't find it, but he'd been fooled before. "The boys are in the therapy room," he said. "I'll introduce you to the night nurse. She'll show you the setup." Linda stood. "Thank you, Mr. Herbert." As she walked toward the door, she paused, turned back. "Sir, may I ask what are their names?" "Your sons." Dwayne blinked. In 18 months, not one caregiver had asked that question first. They'd asked about medical conditions, equipment, emergency protocols. No one had asked their names. "William," Dwayne said slowly. "Henry. Malcolm." Linda smiled. Small but genuine. Beautiful names. Then she left. Dwayne sat at his desk and pulled up the therapy room camera feed. He watched Linda enter, watched her greet the night nurse, watched her set down her bag carefully, professionally. Then she did something unexpected. She didn't immediately start checking equipment or reviewing charts. She walked to each wheelchair, knelt down beside William first, eye level with him. "Hi, William," she said softly. "My name is Miss Linda. I'm going to be taking care of you and your brothers. Is that okay?" William stared past her, his eyes unfocused, his small body rigid in the chair. Linda didn't seem bothered. She smiled at him like he'd answered, like they were having a real conversation. She moved to Henry. Same approach. Knelt down, made herself small. "Hello, Henry. You're a handsome boy, aren't you? Your daddy told me your name. I like it." Henry's head lolled to the side. His hands stayed curled in tight fists against his chest. Linda gently touched his hand. Not grabbing, just acknowledging. Then Malcolm, the smallest of the 3. Eyes closed, body so still he barely seemed present. Linda knelt beside his chair for a long moment, just looking at him. "Hi, sweet boy," she whispered. "I see you. Even with your eyes closed, I see you." Dwayne watched this on his monitor, his jaw tight. What was she doing? The boys couldn't understand her. They couldn't respond. Their cognitive function was severely impaired. Talking to them like that was pointless. Sentimental, a waste of time. But something about the way Linda did it. She wasn't performing. Wasn't doing it because someone was watching. She was doing it because she believed they could hear her. And real quick, if you're still watching this, I need you to do something for me. Leave a comment right now. Just type, "Still watching," and tell me where you're from. Are you watching from the US, UK, Canada, South Africa, the Philippines? Let me know. And if this story is hitting you emotionally, hit that like button. Your engagement helps this message reach people who need to hear it. The first week, Linda followed the protocols exactly. Medications at the prescribed times, positioning rotations every 2 hours, feeding schedules, therapy exercises, as outlined by the physical therapist. Dwayne watched her constantly, looking for mistakes, shortcuts, signs of negligence. He found none. She was efficient, careful, professional. But there were small things. Things that didn't violate the protocols but weren't exactly part of them either. On her fourth morning, Linda brought a small Bluetooth speaker into the therapy room. Dwayne watched her set it on the shelf. Pull out her phone, press play. Soft piano music filled the room. Something classical, gentle. Dwayne's finger hovered over the intercom button. This wasn't in the protocol. The boys had scheduled music therapy on Thursdays, administered by a licensed therapist. Random music wasn't part of the plan. But before he could press the button, he saw it. William turned his head. Just slightly, maybe 3 inches to the right. But his eyes shifted toward the source of the sound. Dwayne leaned forward. William never turned his head. He stared at the same spot on the wall every day, every hour. The physical therapist had noted it in her reports. Patient shows limited voluntary movement, minimal response to environmental stimuli. But he was turning toward the music. Linda noticed too. She didn't react dramatically, didn't call attention to it, just smiled softly and adjusted the volume slightly higher. Henry's fingers twitched. Dwayne watched Henry's right hand, usually locked in a tight fist, against his chest. The fingers moved. Just a small flutter. But movement. Linda knelt beside Henry's wheelchair. She didn't touch him immediately, just positioned herself where he could see her. "You like that?" she asked quietly. "It's Chopin, Nocturne in E-flat major. My grandmother used to play this. She was a piano teacher." Henry didn't respond, but his fingers twitched again. Linda reached out slowly, placed her hand near his. Not grabbing, not forcing, just offering presence. She stayed like that for several minutes. Dwayne's throat felt tight. When was the last time someone had just sat with his sons? Not performing therapy. Not administering medication. Just being with them. When was the last time he had done that? That afternoon, Dwayne found himself walking toward the therapy room. He told himself he needed to check the equipment, make sure the wheelchair brakes were functioning properly. Professional oversight. But when he reached the door, he stopped. Linda's voice drifted through. She was reading. Not a medical report, not therapy notes, a children's story. Dwayne peered through the crack in the door. The boys were arranged in a semicircle facing her. She sat cross-legged on the floor, a picture book open in her lap. Everyone told him, "Turtles can't fly," Linda read, her voice animated, expressive. But the little turtle didn't listen. He climbed to the top of the hill every single day. And every single day, he tried. She paused, looked up at the boys. "Did he ever fly?" she asked them. "What do you think?" Silence. But Malcolm's eyes were open. Dwayne pressed closer to the door. Malcolm, who kept his eyes shut 90% of the day, who seemed to retreat from the world, was looking at Linda. His eyes tracked her face. "I think he did," Linda said softly. "Not the way birds fly, but in his own way. Because believing in yourself is its own kind of flying." She turned the page, continued reading. Dwayne stepped back from the door. His chest felt strange, tight and loose at the same time. What was she doing? His sons couldn't understand stories. Their cognitive processing was severely limited. Reading to them was pointless, wasn't it? But Malcolm was watching her. Henry's breathing had changed, slower, deeper, like he was actually listening. And William's mouth curved slightly at the corner. Was that a smile? Dwayne walked back to his office, sat at his desk, stared at the monitors. That night, reviewing the footage, he watched Linda read that story 4 more times throughout the day. Each time, she changed her voice for different characters, paused to let the words settle, looked at each boy individually, like she was checking to see if they understood, like she believed they could. Something was shifting in that house. Small, almost imperceptible, but real. And Dwayne didn't know whether to stop it or let it continue. Week 3. Dwayne couldn't stop watching. Every night after the house went dark, he'd sit in his office pulling up footage, rewinding, pausing, studying. Linda had stopped following the protocol entirely. Not recklessly, not dangerously, but she'd expanded it. The music became daily. Different composers, different styles, sometimes classical, sometimes jazz. Once, she played old gospel hymns, the kind Dwayne's grandmother used to sing in church. The stories became routine. Every afternoon, Linda would gather the boys and read. Sometimes the same book multiple times. Sometimes new ones she brought from home. And then there were the exercises. Tuesday evening, Dwayne pulled up the afternoon footage. His whiskey glass stopped halfway to his mouth. Linda was on the floor with William. She had his small legs in her hands, tiny, underdeveloped limbs that barely moved on their own, and she was manipulating them in a rhythmic pattern. Left leg forward, right leg forward, left, right, like he was walking. Dwayne's jaw clenched. This wasn't in any therapy plan. No specialist had prescribed this. The physical therapist did stretches and range of motion work, but nothing like this. Linda was improvising, creating her own treatment protocol, breaking every rule he'd set. Dwayne reached for his phone. He should call her right now. Fire her. End this before. William laughed. Dwayne's hand froze. It wasn't a big laugh, just a small sound, breathy, barely more than an exhale. But it was a laugh. His son, who spent most days expressionless, vacant, was laughing. When was the last time Dwayne had heard that sound? He set the phone down. His hands were shaking. He kept watching. Linda moved to Henry, positioned a toy truck on his wheelchair tray, a bright red vehicle with oversized wheels. She placed it just beyond his reach, far enough that he'd have to stretch. "Come on, sweetheart," Linda said softly. "You can do it. Just a little stretch." Henry's arm stayed motionless against his chest. Linda waited, patient, unhurried. "I know you can," she whispered. "I believe in you." Dwayne watched the screen, holding his breath without realizing it. Henry's fingers twitched. Then his whole arm moved slowly, painfully slowly, trembling with effort. His small hand stretched forward, reaching. His fingers touched the truck. Linda's face broke into the widest smile. "Yes, look at you. Look at what you just did." Henry's fingers curled around the toy, gripping it weakly but definitely. Dwayne's eyes burned. He rewound the footage, watched it again, and again. That small arm reaching, those tiny fingers closing around plastic. Such a simple movement, something any typical 2-year-old would do without thinking. But his son, his paralyzed son, who the doctor said had minimal voluntary muscle control, had just done it. Dwayne rubbed his face with both hands. This was dangerous. All of it. Linda was giving his sons false hope, pushing them beyond what medical science said they could achieve. When she failed, and she would fail, they always failed, the disappointment would destroy them, destroy him. He should fire her, tomorrow morning, first thing. But instead of drafting a termination letter, Dwayne pulled up more footage. Malcolm, the smallest of the three, the one who seemed most disconnected from the world. Linda sat beside his wheelchair with a picture book, not reading it, just showing him the pictures. "This one's blue," she said, pointing, "like the sky, and this one's yellow, like sunshine." Malcolm's eyes were open, fixed on the page. "You see it, don't you?" Linda whispered. "You see everything. You're just taking it all in, learning." She turned the page. Malcolm's hand lifted from his lap, just an inch, maybe less, but it lifted. Linda noticed immediately. She gently took his small hand and guided it to the book. "There you go, sweet boy. You touch it, it's yours." Dwayne watched his son's fingers press against the paper. Light, tentative, but intentional. Something cracked in his chest, deep and painful. He closed the laptop, sat in the darkness of his office. And for the first time in 2 years, Dwayne Herbert didn't know what to believe. Before we continue, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment, rate this story so far from 1 to 10. Is it a 10? A 9? Be honest, and tell me what you're feeling right now. Are you crying? Are you angry at Dwayne? Do you understand his fear? Let me know where you're watching from and what this story is bringing up for you. Your comments matter. Wednesday afternoon. Dwayne couldn't take it anymore. 3 weeks of watching through screens, 3 weeks of footage that kept him awake at night, 3 weeks of seeing his sons respond to a woman who broke every rule he'd set. He left his office and walked down the hallway toward the therapy room. His footsteps echoed against the marble floor. Each step felt heavier than the last. He didn't knock, just pushed the door open. Linda was on the floor with Malcolm. She had his small legs positioned in her hands, moving them in that same rhythmic pattern. Left, right, left, right. Like she was teaching his muscles to remember something they'd never learned. She looked up when the door opened. No surprise in her eyes. No fear. Just calm acknowledgement. "Mr. Herbert." Dwayne's voice came out harder than he intended. "What are you doing?" Linda didn't stop the movement. Motor pattern training. It helps build neural pathways, teaches the brain to recognize movement patterns. That's not in the protocol. No, sir, it's not. Dwayne stepped into the room. His hands were clenched at his sides. "I gave you specific instructions. Follow the medical plan. No improvising. No experimental treatments." Linda gently lowered Malcolm's legs, stood up slowly, wiped her hands on her scrubs, and faced him directly. "The medical plan," she said quietly, "has them sitting in wheelchairs all day with minimal stimulation. That's not treatment, Mr. Herbert. That's maintenance." Dwayne's jaw tightened. The doctors gave you a prognosis based on statistics and brain scans. They looked at charts and told you what usually happens. Linda's voice stayed even, but something fierce lived beneath the surface. "They didn't tell you what's possible. They're specialists. They've seen hundreds of cases like this. Have they seen your sons?" The question hung in the air. Dwayne stared at her. "Excuse me?" Linda took a breath. "Your boys aren't statistics, Mr. Herbert. They're not case studies or data points in a medical journal. They're children, individual children with their own potential, and children deserve someone who sees them, not their diagnosis." Dwayne felt heat rise in his chest. "You think you know better than doctors who've studied this for decades? Who've dedicated their entire careers to understanding cerebral palsy? I think I know that giving up on a child is the one thing guaranteed to fail." Silence. The words landed like a physical blow. Dwayne's hands were shaking. From anger or something else, he couldn't tell. "You're filling their heads with false hope," he said quietly. "When this doesn't work, and it won't work, they'll be devastated." Linda looked at him for a long moment. Something shifted in her eyes. Not pity, something deeper, something that looked like compassion. "For him, they're 2 years old, Mr. Herbert. They don't know what false hope is. They only know what they feel. And right now, they feel someone believing in them." She paused. Maybe for the first time. The words hit Dwayne like a slap across the face. He opened his mouth, closed it. No words came. Linda turned back to Malcolm, knelt beside his wheelchair. "You hired me to care for them," she said softly, not looking at Dwayne. "That's what I'm doing." She resumed the leg movements, gentle, patient, consistent. Dwayne stood there, watching her ignore him. His mind screamed at him to fire her. Right now, call the agency, have her replaced by morning. But his feet wouldn't move. Because deep down, in a place he'd locked away and buried, a voice whispered something he didn't want to hear. What if she's right? What if you gave up too soon? What if these boys can do more than anyone told you? Dwayne turned and walked out. He didn't say another word. But he didn't fire her either. That night, Dwayne sat at his desk with a termination letter open on his laptop. The cursor blinked at the end of the first sentence. Patient, unforgiving. Dear Miss Johnson, effective immediately. Your services are no longer required. He'd written those words 12 times before. Different names, same outcome. His fingers knew the rhythm. Type the letter, call the agency, sign the paperwork, move on. But tonight, his hands wouldn't cooperate. Dwayne stared at the screen until his eyes ached. Then he minimized the document and pulled up the security footage. The house was quiet, lights dimmed. Everyone should have been asleep hours ago. But the therapy room camera showed a soft glow coming from inside. Linda was still there. Dwayne leaned closer to the monitor. She sat on the floor in the center of the room, cross-legged, surrounded by 3 wheelchairs arranged in a semicircle. A small lamp on the shelf cast warm shadows across her face. The boys should have been in their medical beds by now, The night nurse should have transferred them an hour ago. But there they were. Still with her. Linda wasn't doing exercises, wasn't following any protocol. She was just sitting with them, humming a melody Dwayne didn't recognize. Something old and gentle, like a song passed down through generations. Dwayne turned up the volume. Her voice came through the speakers, soft, clear. She reached up and touched William's hand where it rested on his armrest. Didn't grab it, just laid her fingers over his. "You did so good today," she whispered. "I'm so proud of you. Do you know that? I'm proud of you." William's fingers curled slightly, just a small movement, but intentional. Dwayne's throat tightened. Linda held his hand for a long moment, then moved to Henry. She adjusted his blanket, tucking the edges around his small legs. Even though it didn't need adjusting, her hands moved with such gentleness, such care, like he was made of something precious. "Sweet boy," she murmured, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. "You're so much stronger than anyone knows. I see it. Even if they don't, I see it." Henry's eyes were closed, but Dwayne noticed his breathing had changed. Slower, calmer. The way a child breathes when they feel safe. Then Linda turned to Malcolm. The smallest of the three, the one who kept his eyes shut most of the day, like the world was too much to take in. Linda lifted his tiny hand and pressed it against her cheek, closed her eyes. "I see you," she whispered. "All of you. Every piece. You're not broken, baby. You're just waiting. And I'll wait with you, as long as it takes." A tear slipped down her cheek. Dwayne stared at the screen. This woman, this stranger, she was sitting in his house at 11 o'clock at night, crying over his sons, talking to them like they understood, like they mattered, like their lives meant something beyond medical charts and therapy schedules. When was the last time he'd done that? When was the last time he'd just sat with them? Not as a worried father calculating costs, not as a man reviewing therapy reports, just as their dad, just being present. He couldn't remember. The realization hit him like a fist to the chest. Dwayne closed the laptop slowly. The termination letter sat unfinished in its window, waiting. He should send it. Logic demanded it. Linda was dangerous. She was filling his sons with hope that would shatter them. She was defying doctors who'd studied these conditions for decades. She was breaking every rule he'd established to protect his family. But another voice spoke, quieter, deeper. "What if she sees something you stopped looking for?" Dwayne stood up, walked to the window. The garden sat dark below, moonlight catching the edges of untrimmed hedges. The dry fountain in the center. He thought of Elisa. What would she say if she could see him now? See what he'd become. A man who watched his sons through screens. A man so afraid of losing more that he'd stopped being present for what remained. She would hate this. She would hate him. Dwayne pressed his forehead against the cold glass. He deleted the termination letter. Told himself it was exhaustion. Finding another caregiver meant paperwork, background checks, interviews. He didn't have the energy. But as he climbed the stairs toward his empty bedroom, he heard it. Soft humming drifting from the therapy room below. Linda was still singing to his sons. And Dwayne realized the truth he'd been avoiding. He wasn't keeping her because firing her was inconvenient. He was keeping her because she was the only person in 2 years who hadn't given up on his boys. And somewhere deep inside, he needed to see what happened when someone refused to accept impossible, even if it destroyed him. Week 4. Dwayne stopped pretending he wasn't obsessed. Every night after the house went dark, he'd sit in his office pulling up hours of footage, fast-forwarding through empty hallways, pausing on moments that made his chest tight, rewinding scenes he needed to see again and again. Linda had changed the therapy room. Small things at first. She'd moved the wheelchairs closer together so the boys could see each other. Replaced the sterile white blankets with colorful ones she'd brought from home, soft blues and greens with patterns of stars and moons. Added 3 plants by the window, real ones, living things. "They need to see things grow," she'd said when Dwayne asked about it through the intercom. He didn't stop her. He should have. It wasn't protocol. But watching the room transform from cold and clinical to warm and lived in did something to him he couldn't name. Then the real changes started. Thursday afternoon. The licensed physical therapist arrived for the boys' weekly session. Dr. Patterson. She'd been coming for 20 months. Professional, thorough, consistent. Dwayne watched through the camera as she entered the therapy room with her clipboard and equipment bag. She greeted Linda, then approached William's wheelchair. Started her standard assessment: muscle tone, joint flexibility, reflexes. She moved William's arm, then his leg. Her hands paused. She did it again. Dwayne leaned toward the screen. Dr. Patterson's expression changed. She looked up at Linda, said something Dwayne couldn't quite hear. Then she moved to Henry. Same assessment, same pause. Dr. Patterson called Linda over. They spoke quietly, heads bent together. Dwayne turned up the volume. Significant improvement in muscle tone, Dr. Patterson was saying. This is unusual, very unusual. What specific exercises have you been doing? Linda explained something, gesturing with her hands, demonstrating the motor pattern training, the reaching exercises, the weight-bearing work. Dr. Patterson nodded slowly, writing on her clipboard. Then she examined Malcolm, tested his muscle response, his joint mobility, his voluntary movement. When she finished, she stood there for a long moment, just looking at the three boys. Then she turned to Linda. Keep doing whatever you're doing, Doctor, Patterson said. I'm going to adjust the official protocol to include your methods, and I want to schedule more frequent evaluations. I need to document this. She paused at the door before leaving, looked back at the boys, then at Linda. I've been doing this for 19 years, she said quietly. I've never seen this level of improvement in children this severe. Not this fast. After she left, Linda stood in the center of the room. She looked at William, Henry, Malcolm, and smiled. Quick pause. Are you still with me? If you've made it this far, you're invested in this story. So do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and rate this story in the comments. Give me a number from 1 to 10. Tell me where you're watching from. Are you from Atlanta, London, Sydney, Dubai, Manila, Dubai, Cape Town? Drop your location and your rating. And if this story is hitting different, smash that like button. Let's keep going. That night, Dwayne didn't just watch current footage. He went back, day by day, week by week. He watched Linda on the floor with Henry, moving his legs in walking patterns. Over and over. The same movement. The same rhythm. Patient. Steady. Never frustrated. Never giving up. He watched her hold William's hands, helping him bear weight on his feet for just seconds at a time, his small legs trembling, then holding, then trembling again. But each day, he held a little longer. He watched her with Malcolm doing arm exercises to music, his tiny limbs moving slowly at first, then smoother, more controlled. Dwayne pulled up footage from the first week Linda arrived. The boys sat still in their wheelchairs, vacant, distant. Then footage from yesterday. William reaching for a toy across his tray, Eric's foot tapping to music, Malcolm holding his head steady, eyes tracking Linda as she moved around the room. The difference was undeniable. Dwayne's hands trembled on the keyboard. He opened a new browser window, typed, "Neuroplasticity in children with cerebral palsy." Articles flooded the screen. Medical journals, case studies, research papers from universities he recognized. Johns Hopkins, Stanford, Duke. He clicked the first one. Early intervention in pediatric cerebral palsy cases has shown remarkable results in neural pathway development. The infant and toddler brain demonstrates extraordinary plasticity, the ability to form new connections and bypass damaged areas. He clicked another. Repetitive motor pattern training can stimulate the brain to create alternative neural pathways. With consistent, targeted intervention, children with CP have achieved mobility outcomes far exceeding initial prognosis. And another, the critical window for neuroplastic intervention in CP is between birth and age 3. During this period, the brain is most receptive to forming new connections and learning compensatory movement patterns. Dwayne read until his eyes burned, until the words blurred together, until 3 o'clock in the morning crept past and the house sat silent around him. Everything Linda had said. The neural pathways, the brain's ability to rewire itself, the importance of early intervention, the power of belief and consistency. It was all there, in black and white, published in peer-reviewed medical journals, and he'd never looked. Not once in 2 years. He'd taken those first doctors at their word, accepted their verdict like a death sentence, stopped researching, stopped questioning, stopped hoping. Dwayne closed the laptop, sat in darkness. His sons were improving. Actually improving. Doing things those initial specialists said they'd never do. And he'd almost fired the woman responsible. Twice. His stomach turned. For 2 years, he'd poured money into maintaining his son's limitations. Expensive wheelchairs, medical equipment, nurses who kept them comfortable in their diagnosis. But he'd never once fought for something more. Linda had been here 4 weeks, making $17 an hour, and she'd accomplished what his millions hadn't touched. Because she believed, and he'd stopped believing the day Elisa died. Dwayne's eyes burned, his throat closed. Shame. That's what this feeling was. Deep, crushing shame. He'd failed his sons, not by loving them too little, but by expecting too little, by accepting defeat before the fight even started. Elisa would never have accepted it. She would have researched every journal, consulted every specialist, tried every method. She would have fought with everything she had. But Elisa was gone, and Dwayne had buried his fight with her, until Linda walked through his door and showed him what he'd forgotten. That giving up was a choice, and he'd been choosing it every single day. Dwayne didn't sleep that night, or the next. He wandered his house like a ghost, passing rooms he'd stopped entering years ago. The formal dining room where he and Elisa had planned to host Thanksgiving dinners. 20-person table, empty chairs. The sunroom where she'd wanted to read while the boys played. Bookshelves full, furniture untouched. The nursery with the yellow walls and the animal mural she'd painted herself. He opened that door for the first time in 20 months. Dust covered everything. The 3 cribs still stood in their semicircle. A mobile of stars and moons hung motionless above them. Elisa's rocking chair sat in the corner, a folded blanket draped over its arm. Dwayne stood in the doorway, unable to step inside. This was supposed to be their life. He closed the door, walked away. Friday morning, he skipped his office entirely. Instead, he sat in the hallway outside the therapy room, back against the wall, listening. Linda was inside with the boys. He could hear her voice through the door. "That's it, William. Just like that. See, your legs know what to do. We just have to remind them." Dwayne closed his eyes. "Henry, baby, look at you. You're holding that toy so tight. You're so strong." His throat ached. "Malcolm, sweet boy. You're watching your brothers, aren't you? Taking it all in. Learning." Dwayne pressed his palms against his eyes. What had he done? For 2 years, he'd hidden behind screens and spreadsheets. He'd paid people to love his sons because he was too broken to do it himself. He'd accepted their limitations as permanent because accepting defeat was easier than fighting for hope. And all the while, his boys had been waiting. Waiting for someone to see them. Linda saw them. A stranger saw what their own father had been too blind to notice. Dwayne heard laughter through the door, small and breathy, but real. One of the boys, maybe William, maybe all 3. His heart cracked. He should be in there. He should be the one making them laugh. Moving their legs, holding their hands, telling them they could do impossible things. But he didn't know how anymore. Elisa had taken that part of him when she died. Dwayne stood up slowly. His legs felt weak. He walked back to his office, but he didn't turn on the monitors. Instead, he sat at his desk and opened his drawer, pulled out the photo he kept hidden there. Elisa, 8 months pregnant, glowing. Her hands rested on her belly. She was looking at the camera with so much hope it hurt to see. "I'm sorry," Dwayne whispered. "Sorry for giving up. Sorry for hiding. Sorry for letting fear win." He put the photo back, opened his laptop. Not to watch footage this time. He searched for pediatric neurologists, specialists in early intervention, therapists who believed in neuroplasticity. He made a list: names, phone numbers, emails. If Linda could do this much in 4 weeks, with nothing but faith and consistency, what could happen with real support, real resources, real belief? Dwayne stared at the list. For the first time in 2 years, he felt something stir in his chest. Not quite hope, but close. Something like possibility. He closed the laptop, stood up. It was almost afternoon. Almost time for the boys' rest period. Dwayne took a breath. He wasn't ready to walk into that room yet, wasn't ready to face what he'd become or what he'd failed to be. But maybe tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow he'd try. He didn't know that tomorrow would change everything. That in less than 24 hours, he'd open his phone and witness something that would bring him to his knees. That his whole world was about to shatter and rebuild itself in a single moment. But for now, Dwayne sat in his quiet office, holding the smallest seed of belief. And somewhere down the hall, Linda was teaching his sons to walk. Thursday afternoon, Dwayne sat in his office, laptop open, reviewing quarterly reports for Herbert Development Group. Numbers blurred on the screen. He couldn't focus. His mind kept drifting to the therapy room. It was almost 3 o'clock. Linda would be finishing the boys' afternoon exercises. He'd watched the routine so many times he had it memorized. Music first, then motor pattern training, then the reaching exercises. His phone buzzed. Motion alert. Living room. Dwayne frowned. The boys were supposed to be in the therapy room at this hour. They always were. The schedule was precise, consistent. He picked up his phone, opened the security app, expecting to see Linda moving them for a snack or a change of scenery. The image took a moment to register. 3 wheelchairs sat against the wall, empty. Dwayne's stomach dropped. His first thought was panic. Something happened. An emergency. The nurse had to rush them somewhere. His heart hammered against his ribs. Then he saw them. Center of the living room. Hardwood floor gleaming in the afternoon light, streaming through the tall windows. William, Henry, Malcolm. Standing. Dwayne's breath stopped. His 3 sons. His paralyzed sons. The boys, doctors said, would never stand, would never support their own weight, would spend their lives in wheelchairs. They were upright, wobbly, shaking, their small legs trembling violently with effort. But standing, on their own 2 feet, Linda knelt on the floor in front of them, about 6 feet away, her arms stretched wide open. Tears streamed down her face. "Come on, babies," she whispered. Her voice cracked. "Come to me. You can do it. 1 step, just 1 step." Dwayne couldn't breathe. William moved first. His small foot lifted from the ground, hovered in the air, shaking, then landed again. An inch forward. A step. Andrew's hand flew to his mouth. "Yes, William. Yes, baby." Again. William's other foot lifted, came down. Another inch forward. He was walking. Dwayne's son was walking. Henry went next, more cautious. His legs trembled so violently it looked like they might give out any second. But he moved. 1 foot, then the other. 2 steps. A sound escaped Dwayne's throat. Something between a gasp and a sob. Malcolm stood between his brothers, the smallest of the 3. The one who kept his eyes closed most days. The one who seemed most disconnected from the world. He stood there, shaking, arms out for balance, eyes squeezed shut. Linda reached toward him. "You can do it, sweet boy. I'm right here. I'm right here." Malcolm's foot lifted. It came down. Another lift. Another step. 3 steps. Dwayne watched his youngest son, his baby boy, who doctors said had the most severe damage, the worst prognosis, walk toward Linda's outstretched arms. His phone slipped from his fingers. It clattered against the desk, but he didn't hear it. His knees buckled. Dwayne slid down from his chair, back scraping against the desk, until he sat on the floor. His legs wouldn't hold him. On the phone screen, face down but still playing, he could hear Linda's voice. "Yes. Oh my God, yes. Look at you. Look at what you're doing." The boys reached her. All 3 of them. She gathered them into her arms, pulled them against her chest, sobbing openly. "I knew it," she cried. "I knew you could. I knew it." Stop right there. If you're still watching, if you're feeling this, I need you to comment right now. Type "miracle" and tell me where you're watching from. Because what you're witnessing isn't just a story, this is proof that the impossible only exists until someone refuses to accept it. Drop your location, tell me how this is making you feel. And if tears are streaming down your face right now, hit that like button. Let's finish this together. Dwayne sat on his office floor, unable to move. Tears poured down his face. His whole body shook. 2 years. 2 years of doctors saying, never. 2 years of specialists confirming, impossible. 2 years of accepting that his sons would spend their lives in wheelchairs, that they'd never stand, never walk, never run, never chase each other through the hallways of this mansion like he'd once imagined. And there they were, standing, walking, reaching toward a woman who refused to believe what the world told her. Dwayne pressed both hands against his face and wept. Not quiet tears, not controlled grief. This was something deeper, something breaking open inside him that had been locked away since the day Elisa died. Every failure, every betrayal, every night spent watching screens instead of holding his sons. The shame, the fear, the hope he'd buried so deep he'd forgotten it existed. It all came flooding out in waves that shook his entire body. His sons could walk. His sons could walk. And he'd almost given up on them. Dwayne didn't know how long he sat on that floor. Minutes, maybe longer. When he finally found the strength to stand, his legs felt hollow, like they belonged to someone else. He grabbed the edge of the desk, pulled himself up. His phone lay face down on the carpet, still showing the living room feed. Dwayne didn't pick it up. He didn't need to watch anymore. He walked out of his office on unsteady feet, down the long hallway. Past the empty frames on the walls, ghosts of family photos he'd removed because he couldn't bear Elisa's smile. Past the silence he'd built around himself like armor. The living room door stood open. He stopped in the doorway. Linda sat on the floor, all three boys in her lap. They were exhausted from the effort, small bodies limp against her chest. She held them like they were made of something precious. Her face was wet with tears. But she was smiling. She looked up when she sensed him there. Their eyes met. Dwayne expected to see triumph in her face, pride, a look that said, "I told you so." But that's not what he saw. He saw compassion. For him, Linda didn't say anything, just watched him with those steady eyes, holding his sons like she'd always held them, like they mattered, like they were worthy of belief. Dwayne's legs gave out again. He knelt in the doorway, unable to take another step. "How?" His voice cracked. "How did you know?" Linda looked down at the boys, then back at him. "I didn't know, Mr. Herbert." Her voice was soft, gentle. "I just believed." Something broke inside Dwayne. The last wall, the final barrier. He crawled forward on his knees until he reached them. His hands shook as he touched William's face. So small, so perfect. Then Henry's, his beautiful boy. Then Malcolm's, his baby. His sons. For 2 years, he'd watched them through screens. Loved them from a distance. Kept his heart locked away, because losing more would kill him. But they were here, alive, fighting, growing. And he'd almost missed it. Dwayne gathered all three boys into his arms, pressed his face against their small heads, breathed in their scent baby shampoo, and something sweet and indefinable that was just them. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." He said it over and over. An apology for every day he'd spent hiding, every night he'd chosen fear over faith, every moment he'd let grief steal what should have been theirs. "I'm sorry I gave up on you. I'm sorry I stopped believing. I'm sorry I wasn't the father you deserved." William's hand touched his face, small fingers against his wet cheek. Dwayne looked into his son's eyes. And for the first time in 2 years, he saw him. Not a diagnosis, not a limitation, not a broken thing that needed fixing. Just William. His son, perfect exactly as he was. Linda quietly moved back, giving him space. But Dwayne reached out and grabbed her hand. "Stay," he said. "Please." She nodded. They sat there together on the living room floor. A broken father holding his sons. A faithful woman who'd refused to give up. 3 wheelchairs pushed against the wall, no longer needed. Dwayne looked at Linda through blurred vision. "You gave them their legs," he said. Linda shook her head slowly. "No, Mr. Herbert. They gave themselves their legs. I just reminded them they could try." She paused. "And I reminded you that love doesn't give up, even when everything says it should." Dwayne closed his eyes. Elisa would have loved this woman. Elisa would have loved this moment. And somewhere he believed, he truly believed, she was watching. The afternoon light shifted through the windows, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. The house felt different now. Not empty, not abandoned. Alive. For the first time in 2 years, the mansion felt like a home. Dwayne held his sons tighter, let himself feel something he'd forgotten existed. Hope. Not fragile hope, not cautious hope. Real hope. The kind that costs everything and gives back more. I need you to pause and do something. Rate this story one more time. From 1 to 10. Drop it in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from, your city, your country, And if this story changed something in you, hit that subscribe button. Because stories like this need to be shared, miracles like this need to be witnessed. Let's finish this. 6 months later, Dwayne Herbert stood in the backyard of his Connecticut mansion. The fountain ran again, water cascading in the afternoon sun. The garden had been replanted, flowers blooming in beds that had sat empty for years. And in the center of the lawn, 3 boys ran. Not perfectly. Their gaits were uneven, their balance uncertain. They fell often. But they got back up. William chased a soccer ball, his legs still weak, but stronger every day. Henry climbed on the jungle gym Linda had convinced Dwayne to install. Slowly, carefully, but climbing. Malcolm sat in the grass, picking flowers, his eyes open, his face turned toward the sun. Linda stood nearby, watching, always watching, but not as their caregiver anymore. As family, Dwayne had offered her a permanent position, more money, better benefits. She'd accepted on one condition. They're not patients anymore, Mr. Herbert. They're just boys. And boys need to be boys. So the therapy room had been transformed. The medical beds were gone, replaced with regular toddler beds, covered in colorful blankets. The equipment had been moved to a storage room, still there if needed, but not defining their lives anymore. And the yellow nursery, the one Elisa had painted, had finally been opened. The boys slept there now, in the 3 cribs arranged in a semicircle. Under the mural of elephants, 3 baby elephants walking behind their mother, protected, loved, growing stronger. Dwayne's phone rang. His brother Marcus, "Hey man, how are the boys?" Dwayne smiled. "Come see for yourself." He sent a video. William taking 5 unsteady steps. Henry reaching for a toy on a high shelf. Malcolm laughing, actually laughing at something, Linda said. Marcus called back immediately. "Dwayne, I don't even have words." "I know." The doctors said. The doctors were wrong. Dwayne's voice was steady, strong. Not about the diagnosis, but about what was possible. He paused. "I was wrong too. I gave up. I stopped believing. And I almost missed this." "But you didn't miss it," Marcus said softly. "You're there now. That's what matters." After they hung up, Dwayne walked over to where Linda stood. "Thank you," he said. Linda smiled. "You've said that about 1,000 times, Mr. Herbert. Call me Dwayne, please." "Okay, Dwayne. And I'll keep saying it, every day, for the rest of my life. Because you didn't just give my sons their legs, you gave me back my heart." Linda's eyes glistened. "You never lost your heart. You just forgot where you put it." William ran over, crashed into Dwayne's legs, nearly knocked himself over. Dwayne scooped him up, lifted him high. William squealed. That pure, joyful sound of childhood. Henry and Malcolm came running. Well, Malcolm crawled quickly, but he was moving, on his own. Dwayne gathered all 3 into his arms. His sons. His miracles. He looked up at the house, the windows gleaming in the afternoon sun. And for just a moment, he could have sworn he saw her, Elisa, standing in the window of their old bedroom, smiling. Not sad, not disappointed, proud. Dwayne blinked, and she was gone. But the feeling remained. She was here, in the laughter of their sons, in the life returning to this house, in the hope that had finally come home. "Daddy," William said, one of his first clear words. Dwayne's throat tightened. "Yeah, buddy? Play. Okay, let's play." And for the first time in 2 years, Dwayne Herbert played with his sons. Not as a man haunted by grief, not as a father paralyzed by fear, just as a dad, being present, being alive, being grateful for second chances. This story is about more than 3 boys who learned to walk. It's about a father who learned to hope again. It's about a woman who refused to accept impossible as an answer. But most of all, it's about this truth. Miracles don't need permission. They don't wait for the right circumstances or the perfect moment. They just need someone brave enough to believe. Someone willing to show up every single day, even when progress is invisible, even when everyone says it won't work, even when fear screams that hope is dangerous. Dwayne Herbert spent 2 years watching his life through screens, protecting himself from pain by refusing to be present for love. Linda Johnson spent 5 weeks believing in 3 boys everyone else had written off. And in the collision between fear and faith, hope won. Not because hope is easy, because someone chose to believe anyway. So here's my question for you. What impossible thing have you given up on? What dream did you bury because someone told you it couldn't happen? What person did you stop believing in, including yourself? Because this story proves something we all need to remember. The only impossible things are the ones we stop trying for. The only miracles that don't happen are the ones nobody believes in. If you're watching this and you've given up on something, a relationship, a dream, a person, yourself, let this story be your reminder. It's not too late. It's never too late to start believing again. Before you go, I need you to do 3 things. First, subscribe to this channel. Hit that button right now, because stories like this need to be told. And I've got hundreds more that will change the way you see the world. Second, rate this story in the comments. Give me a number from 1 to 10. Be honest. And tell me where you're watching from. Drop your city, your country. I want to know how far this message is traveling. Third, share this video. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's given up. Someone who stopped believing. Someone who needs to remember that miracles are real. Because Dwayne's story is real. William, Henry, and Malcolm are real. Linda is real. And the impossible becoming possible? That's real too. You just have to be brave enough to believe. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And remember, hope isn't foolish. Giving up is.